Welcome back to Fayette Footprints, the podcast where we celebrate the voices and visions that have shaped our community over the last 2 centuries. I'm your host, Kenny Blum, and today we're exploring the life of a woman who turned her Fayette County roots into a global legacy, the legendary folk artist, Nellie Mae Rowe. Born to a sharecropper and a former slave right here on our soil, Nellie went on to become one of the most significant artists of the 20th century. Her playground, as well as her work on display at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, Oglethorpe University Museum of Art, and several traveling exhibitions featuring vibrant colors, dolls, and recycled treasures, remains a testament to the power of her imagination. Joining us to unpack this legacy is the perfect guide for such a journey, Miss Leah Banks. Leah is no stranger to research and communication. As a senior reporter for the Fayette County News newspaper, she has reported on our community, covering everything from government and health to social issues. Her background includes time as an anchor for PAC News and a staff writer for The Maroon, both at Loyola University, New Orleans. She is fluent in many aspects of journalism and reporting, from content development, photography, social media creation, and web design. Leah's publications on Nellie Mae Rowe include several articles in the Fayette County News newspaper, as well as in the Fayetteville 200th anniversary publication from 2023, in which she wrote most of the articles for that special print magazine. In short, she could probably do this podcast better than I can. Leah, your career has been dedicated to documenting the truth and soul of a community. Thank you so much for helping us honor Nellie Mae Rowe today, and welcome to Fayette Footprints.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking your time out. You've written several articles for Fayette Publications. What was it about Nellie Mae Rowe's life and art that first captured your attention, and how did you first encounter her work?
So, I encountered Nellie Mae Rowe's life and work when I was an undergraduate student studying art history.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yes, I took the classes as an elective, and one was a African folk art, and the task was to research a local artist that may classify as a folk artist. And Nellie Mae Rowe was the first one to pop up. So, of course, I'm excited. Yeah. I'm like, absolutely, this is perfect. And she is literally in my city. So going through her work, I thought it was not only thought-provoking, but it took me on a journey. Because given when her work was done, as well as the changing social climates, especially for Black and brown women, I thought it was important for me to touch on the topic. And then I noticed how simplistic everything was, from the use of chewing gum to the use of crayons. And I said, oh, okay, so given her upbringing as a child of a sharecropper, constantly working outdoors, she didn't really have a childhood. So I said, okay, that's similar to how Black and brown girls are brought up now, having to grow up too quickly, jump into the workforce, having to watch their siblings.
Yes.
So I said, what if I take this and I say, there's a correlation here. So ever since then, I've always been interested in just her work, her art, her life, and the legacy it leaves.
And even working with those simple materials, because she would have had opportunity to get to those art supplies, would she?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So even in her upbringing, a couple research websites say that she didn't really have time to draw or to play with dolls, even when she handmade her own. So she had her first husband, he tragically passed, and then when her second husband passed, it was kind of her coping with grief, where she realized, I can be an individual, but I can also reclaim that girlhood that I was probably missing. I think that's the best thing about folk art, is it's open to interpretation, but to me, that's what she was looking at.
You already touched on this just a little bit. She did have quite a bit of personal loss with her husbands, including the death of her second husband in 1948. Which is often cited as a catalyst for her increased artistic focus. How do you think her art served as a form for her emotional resilience, or the way that she helped to build her life story?
So that one is a doozy.
Yep.
I will always say that grief is something that is never linear. So for Nellie Mae Rowe to lose her second husband, I took that as, okay, how was she able to navigate her grief and turn it into something productive? She used those simplistic things that she saw every day that we oftentimes in 2026 take for granted. And she said, okay, I can pour into my craft and make something beautiful despite that emotional pain that I feel. So to me, she took that turmoil and turned it into triumph in that one moment, and it propelled her forward. So I think that ultimately with that, and it's also kind of symbolic of the fact that, okay, I was a grown woman. I just lost my second husband. Mm-hmm. How can I reclaim that sense of innocence, that sense of peace? And I think that through that art, it gave her her resilience back. It gave her her emotional stability back, and it allowed her to really just explore a different kind of freedom.
I thought it was quite interesting that Nellie Mae Rowe is often categorized as a self-taught or even an outsider in terms of the art environment. Can you describe a little bit about how she was so different and maybe a little bit even cutting edge for her time?
Ooh, okay, that's a good one. Nellie Mae Rowe being self-taught. So typically what it means to be self-taught is we hear a lot about how your more well-known artists have mentors or someone that's a predecessor for them. Mm-hmm. Given her rural upbringing, she didn't really have anyone.
Right. She wasn't studying the classics.
Right. She was not studying your Monets and everything like that. So when you look at her work, she taught herself the importance of line and color theory and how things really worked, but she did it in a very simplistic way. Mm-hmm. So if you ever visit the High Museum of Art at her exhibit, her paintings are on the walls. And I believe they have a small replica of her work that's there. Mm-hmm. But in her artwork, you see that the medium that's used is crayon or Crayola marker or whatever it have you. And in the diorama that they have, it says, oh, it's a list of just things. It's like chewing gum or I think one is like cotton wire or whatever. That is where you get that outsider feeling, because for a woman that is well into her years, and she's not using like heavy paints or
acrylics or
right, like she's not using heavy paints or like these outlandish like mediums. She's just using something that maybe a child would use, but it's easily interpreted as her own. So a lot of people would consider her an outsider because she's not using the traditional mediums. They're things that you wouldn't typically see. Like nobody would think to use chewing gum as a modeling component, or to even use their home as the playground. Right. Like nobody would think of that. So
truly outside the box, right?
Yeah. So to me, she allows for those people who, and even myself, I consider myself a person who may not always fit into a box. Mm-hmm. She saw a glass ceiling and chose to break it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what kind of makes her an outsider.
Yeah. She kind of saw the glass ceiling and just stepped outside of the whole box anyways,
exactly.
Didn't she?
She shattered it and just let it be.
That's right. Her prolific time was really during the 1970s. What do you think about the culture of America during the 1960s and 70s that might have impacted her work so much?
So that was a time in America where things were a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, a little bit different. So my parents actually grew up in the 1960s and 70s. So given how her work is designed, you see a transition from when she lived rurally to when she moved to the suburbs and more into city living. Mm-hmm. So in the 1960s and 70s, not many Black and brown families could make that jump. Okay. So for her, you were able to see pivotal time periods like the Civil Rights Movement portrayed in a very, I would say, childlike way. Mm-hmm. It was explained where like she has one picture where it's her, but it's also, you would interpret it as somebody that may be fairer skinned in the picture as well, but they're standing together, showing a sign of unity during this time. But also you have that idea of Black and brown people coming out of poverty during this time, trying to find their way, establishing their careers in a time where it may be difficult, and also breaking those ceilings as well. So I think that the culture of America allowed her to see the real differences between rural living and actual city living. You're able to see different styles of cars, different styles of clothing, the possibilities of using different forms of mediums. These things could really allow her to really shine within her work and her workspace. So especially in the 70s, that's when you get into the different color theories and how you can pull different mediums together and really make it your own. Mm-hmm. So I think ultimately that was when her artwork really shifted.
Okay. Which was a perfect time for blooming, like you said, with everything else going on at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially in Atlanta. You had so much going on here. So, and of course, everybody says, well, Fayetteville isn't considered Atlanta. So even going from that small shack in Fayetteville to the north side of Atlanta. That is a big leap.
It's a big jump.
We can see it now. It's a big
Right.
leap.
Continuing on with her success, how would you think that her art impacted the world of art?
The world of art. Okay. So, how do I think her work impacted the world of art? Okay. So, her first solo exhibition took place in 1978. So we're rounding out the 70s, going into the 80s. So to me, that impacted the world of art because back then we saw a lot of Black art through photography. We saw a lot of Black art there were painted works, but we didn't see a lot of folk art around that time.
Okay.
So I think that her art allowed for other artists, it may be up-and-comers, to really embrace the fact that you could find beauty in the simple things. You didn't have to go and spend a lot of money just to basically embrace yourself and your creativity and allow others to embrace yourself and your creativity as well. So I think that allowed for the world of art to really see, hey, I can also express myself. I can regain my emotional awareness through artwork as well. And I think that a lot of times for Black and brown women especially, we have a habit of not being able to fully be creative because we are so focused on success. Sometimes embracing ourselves, embracing our talents, like Nellie Mae Rowe did, it can push a lot of Black and brown female artists forward. It can allow us to have that space. And I think with her using the most simplest of things, it allowed for us to propel forward. It allowed for the world of art to propel forward.
And it takes away an excuse of not being able to create.
Yes.
You can create with whatever you have.
You can get a pencil and a piece of paper, and next thing you know, allow your ideas to soar.
Okay, here's a tough question. We've been expanding on a lot of things, but now we're going to simplify. If you had to distill the enduring legacy of Nellie Mae Rowe into a single sentence for the next generations of artists or the next generation of people who would go see her art, what would that statement be?
If I had to distill the enduring legacy of Nellie Mae Rowe into a single sentence for a generation of artists and viewers in this climate, I would say artistic freedom and creativity is never limited to social norms.
I like it. That's a powerful statement. She was a pretty powerful woman, wasn't she?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that she, just reading about her life, her work, and really just seeing her work in real time, it made me embrace a lot of my creativity as well.
We sometimes try to equate art with success, and it doesn't need to be, but she didn't, for 60 years, didn't really have, quote, success outside of herself. It wasn't until later in life. So just keep at it.
Yes.
And somebody will notice it, or if not, do it for yourself.
Absolutely.
I kind of hit on this a little bit in the opening. How could some of our listeners see more of Nellie Mae Rowe's art?
If you would like in-person looks of Nellie Mae Rowe's art, I would definitely suggest going to the High Museum of Art. There is her exhibition there. There is also information about Nellie Mae Rowe and her work on the National Museum of Women in Art's website, as well as other various websites. I hate to say a lot of simple Google searches will work, but you will learn so much of her backstory and her life that way. But if you really want a true look at her work, the High Museum of Art is the best place.
Right. Looking at it online is not the answer.
Not at all.
But we will include several of those links in the show notes, including there's actually a Facebook group that posts some long-forgotten history, and I'll have all those posted on the show notes also. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more, or you could come down here to the Fayette County Historical Society and read the 200th Fayetteville Celebration magazine, where Miss Leah Banks has got several articles, including the one about Nellie Mae Rowe. You should make your way into downtown Fayetteville and take a look at that. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to meet you, and I love how much you were able to expand on what you've written about her and what you've done research about her and share that with so many other people. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Once again, I'd like to thank Miss Leah Banks for bringing all of her information about Miss Nellie Mae Rowe. You can find more information about Nellie Mae Rowe in the podcast footnotes. There's several links in there, but please, if you ever get a chance, check out some of her items on display at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta. Coming up in the future, we've got episodes about the different cinemas around Fayette County, working on one about the history of Brooks and many more. If you have any ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can either tap the text me link right there inside Buzzsprout, or Email me at fayettefootprints@gmail.com. All of my podcasts can be found at most major podcatchers. Thank you, and I appreciate you listening to Fayette Footprints.